Everyone, we will go ahead and kick off today's webinar. So welcome to the webinar for the Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Laws January 2025 admission cycle. So we are currently in our final week for January 2025 applications. And this is a great opportunity to learn more about the program, to find out if this is the right opportunity for you to apply, and to learn what's required of applicants for our program. So let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda for today's session. So we're going to start off with some GDipICL highlights. We're going to talk about the history of the program, professional opportunities, courses, the delivery model, study plans, and then tuition. And then we're going to spend a lot of time on the admissions process. So that's going to provide you with all of the admission criteria for the program, starting with the things that every single applicant must provide, including transcripts, references, and the personal statement of interest response. And then we're going to talk about those things that are only required for some of our applicants, such as English language proficiency test scores and a review of the access pathway. Then I'm going to talk specifically about the January 2025 admission cycle. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up the Q&A at that point for you to ask any of your questions of myself and Valerie, a member of my admissions team here. We will try to answer as many questions as we can, but please hold all questions until the end of the session. All right, before we jump into the body of our presentation, though, we want to make sure that we continually perform our land acknowledgement. So Queen's University is physically situated on unceded traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory, as am I, located here in Kingston, Ontario. We conduct this land acknowledgement at the beginning of all of our sessions because it is important to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples who were here before us and the land that was taken from them. Atrocities are still coming to light to this very day that were perpetrated against the Indigenous population of Canada, which is awful. And we need to take steps, however minor, in whatever form we can, to make sure that we continually acknowledge, we support, we reconcile, and we apologize for what has happened prior. To learn more about indigeneity here at Queen's, definitely take a look at the Office of Indigenous Initiatives and the Four Directions Indigenous Student Center. For any incoming GDipICL students who self-identify as Indigenous, there are great supports provided to you, even in an online setting. All right, this is myself. I'm Don Ames. I'm the manager of admissions and recruitment for the GDipICL program. I've been doing this now for 7 full admission cycles, having just come out of our September 2024 application cycle. So lots of information that I can impart. Hopefully you'll learn something about our program during this webinar, and that you have some really good questions for us at the end to help you understand if this is the right program for you. But let's go ahead and jump into the GDipICL highlights section. We're going to specifically talk about the GDipICL program's history to begin. So the program was forged through an agreement between Queen's University and the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, or the CICC for short. Note them, they are extremely important in the role of anybody who's interested in becoming a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, as they are the group that issues the entry to practice exam. And our program is the only English language pathway to challenge the entry to practice exam, or the EPE for short. Our program began in January 2021 with our first cohort of students. We've been going strong ever since, delivering our program entirely online. That was the #1 component of our program from the very beginning. We wanted to ensure that we could educate students who are living around the globe, who want to become RCICs, regulated Canadian immigration consultants, or to gather the information in our program and utilize it in their own professional endeavors. So we wanted to offer this program entirely online, and we're extremely proud of what we've been able to achieve. And we've educated thousands now of students ever since the beginning of January 2021, and we're really happy with how this program is issued and the education that our students are receiving. And that education is being provided by world-renowned experts, individuals who are experts in their field, whether they are current lawyers, current immigration consultants. Literally, the people who wrote the textbook will be educating you on immigration and citizenship law, and how you will be able to utilize that in a professional setting. I want to just go back to the middle section there. As I've already mentioned, we're the only English language education pathway for those who wish to challenge the EPE to become a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, but there is a French language program as well offered by the University of Montreal. So while this program used to be offered at a variety of different post-secondary institutions at all varying levels, the intention of this agreement between Queen's and the CICC was to narrow down two specific education pathways, one English and one French, to ensure that the education is all uniformly provided and everybody who wants to become an RCIC receives the same information. There are no other programs that allow you to be eligible to write the EPE. So if you're interested in becoming an RCIC, this is the right program for you in English, or the University of Montreal program is available to you in French. I want to take a few slides here to talk about post-graduation opportunities, because while we are talking about the admissions process and getting into our program, it's important to keep in mind those things that you're going to be doing post-graduation. Of course, the number one thing that we're going to talk about primarily in these sessions is the fact that a lot of our students are interested in becoming regulated Canadian immigration consultants. This is the only English pathway to becoming an RCIC and to challenge that EPE. Our graduates have an extremely high pass rate when it comes to completing the EPE. So we're, again, very proud of what we're able to accomplish in the classroom, because we're seeing successes when it comes to EPE participation, and then individuals being hired by fantastic law firms, immigration firms, or striking out on their own and creating their own entrepreneurship opportunities and being their own bosses in the field of immigration and citizenship law. Passing the EPE immediately gives you that RCIC-IRB designation, enabling you to practice right away. And like I've mentioned, we are seeing our students want to strike out on their own. So this is a great opportunity to be your own boss and create your own immigration consultancy practice. We provide you with some really great insights into entrepreneurship in this field within the program. What I do encourage you to do is to visit the CICC's website and review specifically the essential competencies for RCIC practice. The CICC has developed these essential competencies to help individuals understand how they should be operating or managing themselves as an RCIC. And we've based our program around those competencies because we want the program and the experience that you're going to have within each of the individual classes to be very similar to what you're going to experience in the fast-paced environment of immigration and citizenship law. So if you want to learn more about the program ahead of time, review those essential competencies, and I'll provide a link to the CICC's website at the end of this session in the chat. There are other opportunities when it comes to professional experiences beyond our program. So it's not just for those who are wishing to become RCICs. There is great opportunities for individuals who want to get into government work or NGO work, private industry that has that sort of international employment requirement. Anybody knows, if you're looking at the Canadian economy, it is reliant heavily on immigration. And we know that a lot of private industry are going to have that long arm globally to try and attract more employees to Canada. Having the knowledge that you're going to learn in this program to execute your duties in recruitment and selection or employee retention within private industry is going to be huge. So again, there's more things you can be doing with this education outside of just being an immigration consultant. There's fantastic opportunities for policy development and implementation. Lots of great insights for individuals who are currently within a law field. So paralegals, law clerks, other law service individuals, current practicing lawyers can learn a lot from our program, as well as human resources professionals. We see a lot of individuals who think of HR as that future career opportunity for them, or to expand on their current HR acumen, because we understand that there's huge implications on international recruitment and employee retention when it comes to immigration and citizenship law. Lots can be gleaned from our program that will make you an invaluable element of your industry wherever you choose to be employed. And for anybody who's looking at this program for professional development opportunities, maybe you're already in a profession, you just need some CPD hours. There are CPD hours associated with each of our courses, and I encourage you to review our website to determine how many hours you require and which courses interest you. Possibly the intra-student progression would be more appropriate for you. I'm not going to cover the intra-student pathway in this session because it's a completely different pathway, and it's not really viable for individuals who wish to complete the full program, because it will add 4 full terms because you're limited to 1 course per term. and a maximum of 4 courses before entering the full-time program. So it's not ideal. Standard admission is going to be the way for anybody who's interested in completing the full program. All right, speaking of the full program, let's talk about the courses we offer and the 2 different study plan options. So for all of our admission cycles, we accept applications for full-time and part-time studies. So for full-time students, you will complete 3 courses per term across 3 consecutive terms. So anybody who's applying and enters the program as a full-time student this January, you'll finish the program in about mid-December of the same year. You'll complete those 3 courses. As you can see, they're all structured there in that chart below. And you can see that it's ordered. It is ICL 810 all the way to ICL 890 in a specific order. Our program is not a buffet where you can select the courses that you want to take at any time. It's a set menu. So you will take those 3 courses as prescribed. We're going to enroll you in these courses. The only thing you need to select when it comes to course selection is the tutorials you wish to take. And I'll cover tutorials here a little bit later in the presentation. The part-time study plan is a little bit different. Part-time students will complete the program in 6 consecutive terms. So if you start January 2025, you'll finish in about mid-December 2026. You'll take 1 to 2 courses depending on the term, because courses are not offered in every single term. And you can see it's a little bit different. It's not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 structure. It varies, but we've loaded up the courses in kind of blocks, the way that we see them go together extremely well. But you still start with the same 2 and end with the same 2 courses. So again, a little bit of a longer structure, but it is available for individuals who want to study part-time, who can't commit fully. Also, this is a key point to note that you cannot be employed full-time while being a full-time student. These are regulations that are set out by Queen's University and the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs Office, which our program complies with. So if you are working full-time and you can't reduce your professional requirements down to part-time hours, you'll have to consider a part-time study plan, or you'll have to really take a look at those professional responsibilities and reduce those down to be a full-time student. A lot of people ask about how the program is structured. So this is an example of how a full-time student will see their courses for the first term. So everybody will take the first introductory course, ICL 810. It's a 12-week intensive course condensed down to 6 weeks. There are 2 hours of tutorials that you attend, plus a 1-hour plenary tutorial. So you'll do 3 hours of tutorials every single week. But those are conducted on weeknight evenings or weekends midday, depending on your schedule and your selection. And you do that for the first 6 weeks. Then you take ICL 820 and 830 concurrently afterwards. So you're not taking all 3 courses as outlined in this slide here at the same time. You take the first course, and then you take the subsequent 2 courses. Something similar is there for part-time students. You're taking the first course, again, similar to a full-time student, same requirements within the course, same assignments, same assessments, same quizzes. But then after that course is completed, you're only taking ICL 820. Now let's cover tutorials. So as I mentioned, the majority of our program is completed via self-directed learning opportunities. These are things that you do on your own time outside of a traditional classroom setting. So those are the quizzes, the assignments, the online interactions, readings. All of those are done kind of based on when you can complete those requirements. There are mandatory live tutorials that every single student must attend, whether you are full-time or part-time. And as I've mentioned, tutorials take place at 2 very set times. They're either weeknight evenings between 6 and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or they're weekends midday between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Really highlight the fact that you're operating within the Eastern Standard Time Zone for anybody who's located internationally outside of Canada, or even for those who are on one of the extreme coasts of Canada. Make sure you are aware that we operate in the Eastern Standard Time Zone, and you must convert your time to attend those tutorials when they are scheduled. As I mentioned, there's an additional 1-hour plenary tutorial for ICL 810. There's also one for ICL 890, the final course. Those take place on Tuesday evenings between 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All students must attend tutorials. They are mandatory. You must be able to have your camera on, your microphone ready to be unmuted when you want to participate in your activities. It's how we judge attendance through your participation in the tutorials. And really missing a tutorial is going to be extremely detrimental to your ability to complete the program. I've already mentioned the ICL 810 course is a 12-week course condensed down to 6 weeks. Miss one of those 6, and that's going to be a significant time loss and for your ability to complete the program. Now let's talk about tuition. Tuition is another component we get a lot of questions about in our program. So tuition is already established via our tuition and financing page. All students pay the exact amount of tuition. Also, all incoming students need to ensure that they pay a one-time tuition deposit of $400 to secure their spot in the upcoming program. So you pay that once you accept your offer of admission. That tuition deposit is then applied towards your tuition. It is non-refundable, so you have to make sure that you're going to attend the program once you accept your offer of admission. Tuition for the rest of the program, though, is paid in installments based on the term and the number of courses you are taking in that term. So full-time students entering the program this January will pay for 3 courses. Part-time students will pay for 2 courses. The Queen's tuition payment plan is also available to our students in our program. It allows you to take that term lump sum payment and break it into 4 equal installments, where you pay 1/4 of the tuition for that term in each of the months of the term. So you can pay January, February, March, and April. That's applied via your Solus account, which is your student online account. More information will be provided to incoming students about applying for that. In regards to tuition, one other thing we want to note here, and it's unfortunate, but it's true, is the fact that our program is not OSAP eligible. So for students in Ontario, you can't apply for provincial government funding to pay for our program. We would love if we were OSAP eligible, but this is a Queen's University regulation, and our program just does not qualify for that. This then restricts provincial funding across Canada. So there's an agreement from all of the different provinces that if the tuition is not eligible, or if the program is not eligible for tuition assistance from the federal or from the provincial government in that province, it then restricts other provincial funding opportunities. So that's why we've partnered up with other organizations to assist with tuition support. We have a RBC line of credit partnership that you can apply for. One of the key things here is to make sure you have a Canadian cosigner to help you out with that line of credit. Also, we've partnered with Windmill Microlending to offer new Canadians up to $15,000 of low interest loans to help pay for the course, elements around the course, as well as your own personal living expenses to support you in really prioritizing re-education when it comes to this program. So look to our tuition and financing page, a link of which I will provide at the end of the session for more information about these opportunities. Also, for full-time students, or applicants, you should be applying for our entrance bursary. The bursary is due on August 15th, so you can apply for the program, then apply for the program afterward, or apply for the bursary afterwards. You don't need an admission decision to apply for the bursary, so just submit that if you are a full-time applicant. The final thing I want to note here before we get into the admission requirements is that you're learning more about the program by attending this session, which is fantastic. There's more you should be doing, though. Make sure you take our online self-assessment to learn about the different elements about the program and see if this program is right for you at this time. Also, make sure you're reviewing our web pages in full. Read everything, understand everything, and ask us questions if you have any in regards to our admission criteria or any other thing that you've read on the website. You can email us your questions at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. One thing that we ask you not to email us is pre-assessment requests. We don't take your transcripts in PDF format via email and tell you if you're applicable or you're eligible for our program or not. That's done via the application. So review the different available sites or applications that will help you kind of convert your GPAs over to a Queen's GPA scale to help understand if you're eligible for the program. We also don't do pre-assessments for English language proficiency. Again, that's built into the application. But more on those elements here in the coming slides. But learn more, understand everything, and ask questions if you have any for us. All right, let's go ahead now and break into the different elements when it comes to the admission criteria for the GDipICL program. We're going to begin with things that everybody needs to provide. And the number one thing we're going to cover here are transcripts. So the primary basis of our program is a completed bachelor's degree from a recognized university or equivalent institution. If you have a degree from an institution that's not a university, we'll review those on a case-by-case basis, but the primary basis is that undergraduate degree. We're a graduate level program at a pretty prestigious Canadian university. It is a must that you have attended and completed a bachelor's degree program from a university, and that you've achieved a B average. As I mentioned in the prior slide, we don't do pre-assessments. There are ways to look at your credentials, whether they are domestic in Canada or international, to try and convert those over to our 4.3 GPA scale to understand if you meet the 3.0 B average requirement. Some of them are unofficial, or all of them are unofficial. There's no way we can give you a firm guarantee of whether you're in or not until we receive all of your transcripts with a submitted application. And when I say all of your transcripts, we want to see everything that you've conducted at the post-secondary level. So while the primary basis of our program is that undergraduate degree, you need to provide transcripts from all of your post-secondary studies, including undergraduate, graduate, college or CEGEP studies, as well as anything done for credit, but in a non-degree program. An example of that would be if you studied at Athabasca University for a single course. Even though you may have completed your bachelor's degree 20 years ago, and it's an honors Bachelor of Arts degree, say from York University in Toronto, if you studied at a single course in Athabasca, maybe at the beginning of the pandemic, because you were just interested in doing something, keeping yourself busy, we would need to see from that applicant the York University transcript and the Athabasca University transcript, because everything combines together into your cumulative GPA at both the undergraduate level and overall if you've conducted some graduate level studies. We do our best when it comes to our assessment. We give everybody the benefit of the doubt when it comes to calculating GPAs. We try to bring in the best students that we can. So make sure that you are providing all of your transcripts from all post-secondary studies, even if you didn't complete a program. If you started a master's program after your bachelor's but didn't finish it, note that on the application and have a copy of your a copy of your transcript in English PDF format ready to be uploaded with your application. You should also consider some other programs as well. If you received transfer credit in any way, shape, or form, ensure that you document that on your application. So let's utilize that same York University graduate who studied at Athabasca. Maybe they didn't start their studies at York University. Perhaps they started them internationally at, say, Punjab University in India. Maybe they did 2 years and then transferred to York University, moving to Canada to complete their program. We would need to see not only the York University transcript and then that Athabasca University transcript, we would need to see also your Punjab University transcript as well. Everything makes up your overall post-secondary career, and we would need to see the original place where you studied, as well as the home destination where you transferred those credits to and completed your program. Study abroad or exchange programs also factor into this conversation. If that same York University student, perhaps they didn't start at Punjab University, perhaps they just studied at York University, but for a year, they studied abroad at Punjab University. We would need to see the York University transcript and that study abroad year transcript from Punjab University. Again, everything combined together allows us to give you a fulsome assessment of your credentials. Also, non-degree study transcripts. I've already mentioned that Athabasca University program. Anything conducted for credit at a post-secondary institution should be documented, and you should provide a copy of that transcript. That's our rule of thumb here. Make sure you are providing everything. If we don't have a transcript and it's noted on your application, or if we review your transcript and note that you've received transfer credit or you studied abroad and you didn't provide those transcripts to us, that's going to delay the admission review process, and it may even result in your application not being assessed. Provide everything that you have for our assessment. Also ensure that you have provided all pages of your transcript. Occasionally, we do receive like the final year of a 3-year or 4-year program, or a couple terms, but a couple pages are missing. We also understand there are some programs where you begin at a diploma level and then move into like a 3rd or 4th term of a bachelor's program. We would need to see where you originally started in that diploma studies, as well as all of the terms from your undergraduate studies. Include everything, because the more documents we have, the better we can give you a fulsome assessment. Also note here, international studies are absolutely accepted for our program. We welcome everyone into the application process, and we give everyone an equal review. So make sure that you are providing all of your domestic and international studies via the application. This is an example of what we're looking for transcripts. And while this is a pretty standard North American transcript, a lot of the qualities of this transcript will transfer over to international credentials. For example, it has some sort of official signature from someone with the institution. You can see that there's a watermark of the logo, something that deems it as an official document. It notes the name of the organization, but the real key that we're looking for here is this section here. You can see that these are broken down by terms for this individual application or a transcript. But we really need to see this from all transcripts that we receive. Specifically, we need to see the term breakdown or year breakdown. We need to see the courses you've taken, specifically the names and the course codes if available. And we also need to see the credit associated with each of those courses and the grade received. So you can see from this individual, they did a study term here at this institution in a Faculty of Liberal Arts program. They took 3 courses. Each of those courses were 3 credits, and they received an A, a C+, and a B+. That's exactly what we need to see to do our assessment of your overall GPA. Make sure your transcripts have this available, even if it's in mark sheet form, like a summary document, or if you received individual pages for each term or year, make sure you provide them. For international credentials, it's really important you also include a degree or diploma certificate that lists your name, the program you completed, and the degree date or the degree conferral date. Also, it should be signed off by somebody official with the institution. A lot of times the transcripts will list that your program is complete. Many times, based on international credentials that we've seen, they don't. So include this to ensure that your program is marked as completed. These are some documents we don't accept for the admission review process. This is a printout of a student account. It's not acceptable for our review. We will not utilize it, and we will have to request that you upload a new transcript officially from your post-secondary institution in replacement of this document. Same as this will be marked immediately unofficial because, heck, it says unofficial. The SGSPA staff are really diligent with reviewing these documents, so you will have to get an official copy of this transcript to replace this document. The final thing I encourage you not to do is to not take pictures of transcripts. This is an example that we could receive, and it's insufficient. You can see it's darker than what a scan would be. We won't be able to zoom in to really get a sense of the different elements of it. If you physically have copies of your transcripts, go and take them to an office supply store, a library, or if you have a scanner, scan these front and back in black and white and upload them with the application, making sure that they are not blurry. That's the easiest way to make sure that we get your transcripts for our assessment. A keynote here is that we know that a lot of people have had international credentials assessed by a third-party entity, WES, ICAS, ECE, University of Toronto, continuing education. Those documents are not accepted in place of official transcripts. You can submit them in support of your application in addition to your official transcripts, but not solely. So make sure that you are providing the necessary documents for our assessment. If you don't have your transcripts, start acquiring them now. We are very much into the tail end of the application process, but so long as you apply by the August 1st application deadline, you will have until September 1st to upload your transcripts for the admission review process. So start gathering your documents now, or you can have documents sent on your behalf to the SGSPA office via email, fax, or physical mail. Also, if your institutions utilize MyCreds or some sort of online submission, those are acceptable to submit official documents on your behalf. So some key takeaways for transcripts. Remember, all transcripts from all studies from all years. not just your last study, not your highest level of study, and not only your last few years in your bachelor's degree or master's. We need to see everything, all years, provide everything in English PDF format. That is the best format to upload with your application. Make sure that the file size is low by scanning documents in black and white. If you have a reverse side of your transcript, only include one page, one of those reverse sides. So when I say you scan front and back, if you've scanned 4 pages, say you have a page per year and you've completed a 4-year program, if there's information on the reverse side of each of those pages, you only have to include one reverse page. We don't need to see it 4 different times. That will keep the file size low. Again, no WES or third-party assessment documents in place of transcripts. They can be submitted in addition and in support, but not in place of official documents. If you've received any transfer credit, make sure you note the institution where you received that transfer credit on your application. Same with study abroad or exchange programs. Note that on the application. You will have until September 1st to upload your documents. So you submit your application by August 1st, end of day. Hopefully you have all of your transcripts ready to go at that point, but you will have the month to get us documents for our assessment. We will notify you if there's anything that's outstanding. All right, let's move on now to the second element that all applicants will need to provide for the admission review process, and that's references. Every applicant must provide 2 references with their application. And there are 2 different types of references. There's professional references and academic references. But it's key to note here that every single applicant must provide at least 1 professional reference. So that is a key component for all of our applicants. One of your references must be professional, and we'll cover what a professional reference is in the next slide. That second reference will depend on the type of applicant you are. You will only need to provide an academic reference if you've participated and studied in a post-secondary program within 2 years from the month of application. So we're in July here in 2024. If you've attended a post-secondary institution from July 2022 up until now, your application will need to have 1 professional reference and 1 academic reference. For everybody else, if you've applied and say you completed your bachelor's degree back in 2017, you will not need to provide an academic reference. You will have to provide 2 professional references. So again, limit that academic reference focus for only individuals who have attended a post-secondary program from July 2022 up until now. And note that that academic reference needs to come from your most recent studies. If you've completed a master's program back in April 2023, but you completed your bachelor's degree back in 2004, you have to provide an academic reference for your application because you studied in that master's program, but your academic reference must come from the master's program, not from that bachelor's degree program. So keep that in mind. Everybody submits 1 professional reference. The majority of people are going to submit 2 professional references, but there will be some that will be required to provide 1 professional and 1 academic. What is a suitable professional reference, though? Let's talk about that. A suitable professional reference is a current or former manager or supervisor from either a domestic or international place of business. Could also be from a volunteer work experience, from either a full-time or part-time employment opportunity. So again, that's basically any manager or supervisor in any capacity who has seen you in a professional setting, who identifies themselves as your manager or supervisor, and can attest to your abilities in a professional workspace. This needs to be somebody that you've been in contact with, someone that you can ask for this reference, and someone who agrees to complete the form by that September 1st document deadline. So again, make sure you've interacted with this individual and they are a manager or supervisor in a place of business. Who's not a suitable professional reference is someone who is a colleague, a coworker, a friend, a peer, an equal, someone who has no managerial or supervisory responsibilities over you. Also, someone from another department, someone who has no real interactions with you on a day-to-day professional basis is not a good professional reference. Also, it shouldn't be a family member. Family members are not acceptable in the reference department here. Also, if this individual is not someone you've been in contact with, it's someone you've talked to, but they're not really confident or comfortable providing you a reference, don't utilize them as a professional reference. Seek somebody else. An academic reference is very, very similar. Just replace manager or supervisor with professor, instructor, or TA. Again, it's someone who has some sort of supervisory duties over you in an academic setting. So again, a professor, instructor, TA, someone who's graded things that you've submitted, someone who's provided academic support. It's again, someone you've been in contact with and someone who has agreed to provide the reference on your behalf. Who's not a suitable academic reference? A classmate, a friend, a peer, someone who is not in that position of leadership or authority in a classroom setting. Again, someone from a post-secondary institution older than 2 years from the month of your application. So anything done prior to July 2022 cannot be utilized. And again, it's someone, if they're not really comfortable or confident in providing that document, or if they're not going to be in communication with you, or they've said they can't provide that document by September 1st, don't utilize them as a reference. Now, the question now is, how do you provide references to our office for review? So the application is housed within the School of Graduate Studies Postdoctoral Affairs office, and you apply via their system, and you enter in the contact information for both of your referees. You provide their full names, email addresses, preferably their business addresses, their current positions, their current departments, their current employers or institutions, as well as their telephone numbers. Once you enter in that information into the application system and you submit the application, your role with references is done. Emails are automatically sent out to the email addresses you've listed, and your referees will receive those documents and be asked to complete them as soon as possible. So if you don't have this information for your referees, contact them right away and gather it. If you can only utilize personal emails for these referees, that's fine, but professional references are preferred. So key takeaways here. Again, once your application is submitted, that's the last that you're really involved in the referee submission process. You can contact your references and tell them that you've submitted your application, and they should have received emails from the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs office, and that they should complete the forms as quickly as possible. You should not have any interaction with your referee beyond that. You should not see or touch your forms. You should not be submitting your reference forms. Make sure your referee is doing all that on your behalf. If you talk to them and they have not received the email, get them to check their junk and spam folders. Or if you need further assistance, contact the SGSPA office. They could resend the documents as necessary. Again, no friends, no family members, no coworkers, colleagues, peers, or equals. Make sure that you are utilizing former or current managers or supervisors and or instructors, professors, or TAs. The number one reason applications don't get reviewed is because they're missing at least one reference document. Because it is the component that is out of your control, make sure you are doing your due diligence and interacting with your referees. The final component here that every single applicant must provide via the application is a personal statement of interest response. This is a great opportunity for you to tell us about yourself. There is a 400-word or 2,000 character text box that you can utilize to answer our personal statement of interest question. Make sure you review the question in full. You are answering it accordingly, and we encourage you to use the word limit. 1 to 2 sentences is insufficient when it comes to being eligible for admission consideration. It shows that you're not putting in effort into the response. We want to hear your fulsome response to the question that we're asking. Make sure you are submitting your response with the application, not afterwards. And one key thing here that we like to talk about is that the contents of your personal statement of interest reflect the effort you put into your submission. So basically what you put into it is what we see. So really make the space worthwhile. Take your time with it, but submit it before the August 1st deadline with your application. One final point here is do not utilize any AI generation technology or external help to write your statement. Very easy to flag. It will there will be serious repercussions for anybody who's deemed to have used AI generation. We want to hear from you. This is your opportunity to talk about yourself in the capacity of your interest in the program. Don't get assistance. Don't utilize any AI generation technology. It's really detrimental and impactful on your application in a negative way. All right, let's switch gears now. Let's talk about admission criteria that only a select number of applicants will need to provide. The number one thing that we're going to talk about here is English language proficiency test scores, or ELPT scores for short. The ELPT score submission is a requirement for many applicants, and it is required for the admissions process. This is not something you submit after you receive an offer of admission. It's not something that you get a conditional offer of admission to then provide later. It must be provided for our admission review, which means it needs to be provided by September 1st for January 2025 applications. English language proficiency is key. This is the only English language pathway to becoming eligible to write the EPE, as I've mentioned before. We need you to be English language proficient to be successful in our program and to successfully write the EPE. The CICC no longer has an ELPT requirement to write the EPE because people are going through our program. So that's why it's a key component of the admission review process. We only accept a select number of ELPTs for the admission review process. We accept KLCE, IELTS Academic, TOEFL IBT or internet-based test, and TOEFL PBT or paper-based test. Those first three, we accept test center and online home-based versions of those tests. TOEFL PBT is only located in specific geographic locations and is not available for everybody. So only the paper-based test is available for that. Please ensure you know what is required of each individual score, because you have to have that score to be considered for admission. So KLCE, you have to have an overall score of 70 with no band below 70. IELTS Academic, an overall score of 7.0 with no band below 7.0. TOEFL IBT is an overall score of 101 with no band below 25 out of 30, except for listening, which must be at a 26 out of 30. And the TOEFL paper-based test needs to have an overall score of 607. You may have a fantastic overall score, but say your writing or listening scores are just under that 7.0 or 70 or additional score requirement. That means your score is not eligible for admission consideration. You will have to submit a new ELPT that does meet. Our standards are high because the expectation of being that requirement for a regulating body to issue the entry to practice exam is a significant requirement for our applicants and incoming students. So make sure you are reviewing what is required and you have the appropriate score. There are no exceptions. We will not consider a score that does not meet the admission criteria. We will let you know if your score doesn't meet. You should know because you've seen it and you've seen the requirements. We will contact you and request a score replacement. For IELTS Academic, we do accept the one skill retake. There are some ELPTs that are out there that we do not accept. We don't accept CELPIP, CLB, Duolingo, Pearson, IELTS General, or others at this current time. There are no exceptions to the tests we do and don't accept, so do not request us to utilize a score that we don't accept. We know that some people have IELTS General or CELPIP or CLB when they immigrate to Canada. It's great, but we will not utilize it for the admission review process. If you have one of the approved scores, if it's within a 2-year window from the month of your application, so at this point, anything from July 2022 up until now can be utilized for the admission review process. Anything older than July 2022 cannot be utilized. You'll have to get an up-to-date ELPT score. Let's talk about exemptions. There are 2 different exemptions that allow people who who need to provide an ELPT score to not have to provide one. The way that we look at all applications is that everybody needs to provide an ELPT score unless they meet an exemption. And the 2 exemptions we offer for January applications is 1, that you self-identify as a native English speaker, or 2, that you meet our education exemption criteria. Usually we talk about the ESLA 150 English for Academic Purposes pathway. with the Queen's School of English. This is not available for January applicants. It's only available for fall applicants. So if you are looking at the ESLA 150 pathway, you'll need to await the September 2025 admission cycle for that pathway. Anybody who has selected ESLA 150 for their January 2025 application will be notified, and they'll need to provide an ELPT score. I believe I may have misspoke. September 2025 is when we offer the next ESLA 150 pathway. All right, let's take a look at the exemptions in detail. The first exemption here, you self-identify as a native English speaker. This is tricky. There is no hard and fast definition that outlines what a native English speaker is. So you need to reflect on some different criteria to determine if you self-identify. If you do, you would need to select that on the application to ensure that we review your application in full, taking that exemption into consideration. So the things you should be considering are that you were born and raised in a country where English is an official language. You have used nothing but English throughout all of your education, elementary, secondary, post-secondary. You have not taken any English as a second language or English for academic or conversational purposes. Also, you have constant contact with English throughout your personal and professional activities. If you don't self-identify as a native English speaker, that's okay. There's another exemption, plus you could just provide an ELPT score for the admission review process. One key point here, even if you self-identify as a native English speaker and you meet the exemption criteria, the admission committee reserves the right to request an ELPT score from any applicant at any point in the admission review process. So if they deem that they want to see an ELPT score from you as an applicant, even though you've requested an exemption, you have to provide it. Let's talk about the education exemption. There are specific criteria for individuals who wish to request an exemption based on their education. Let's go through them in its entirety. To meet the education exemption, you must have 4+ years of consecutive full-time academic study at a university where English was the medium of instruction throughout your studies. So let's break that down. 4+ years. This can be conducted at one institution or several institutions concurrently. So we know that there are examples of individuals who have studied a 3-year Bachelor of Arts general diploma, and then they immediately go into a Bachelor of Education 1-year undergraduate degree. That would be consecutive, and we'd be able to review that. If there's any unnatural break in studies, so say you completed a 3-year bachelor's general degree from a university in 2010, and then you went into a master's program at the beginning of 2013, we can't combine those studies together because there's a 3-year gap. So if you completed that undergraduate program in April 2010, if you began your master's studies in September 2010, you would have that summer off. That would be acceptable to continue on with your studies, and we'd be able to take you into consideration for the education exemption, provided that you also studied on a full-time basis. If for any reason you dropped down to a part-time study plan, you will no longer meet the education exemption. There are specific requirements indicated by each post-secondary institution as to who is or isn't a full-time student, so make sure you review those in full. Studies need to be done at a university. College-level studies are not acceptable, even if they are consecutive with a 3-year undergraduate degree. Can't utilize college programs in this exemption. Also, English needs to be the medium of instruction. You need to provide proof that English was the medium of instruction through either your transcript, which indicates it, or a medium of instruction letter directly from your post-secondary institution. So the way that we review the education exemption is through your transcripts and through any additional documents you need to provide to support it, like that medium of instruction letter. Here's an example of one. So this is an example from the University of Calcutta. It indicates that somebody official has signed this document, and it lists right there that the medium of instruction in the program was English. But one thing to note from this specific document, it highlights that it's only for a 2-year program. So hopefully this applicant has provided a similar letter for some other program to meet the exemption criteria. But this is what we need. If it's not listed anywhere that the medium of instruction from your post-secondary studies on your transcript were done in English. So some key takeaways. If you don't meet the exemptions or one of the exemptions that I've just listed, You must provide an ELPT score by September 1st. If you request an exemption and it's not approved, that decision is final and you must provide an ELPT score. There are no appeals in that process. Make sure you have your medium of instruction letters ready to go and submitted to our office on your behalf to ensure that we know that your post-secondary institutions were conducted in, or your studies were conducted in English. You can upload those also with your transcripts with your application. We don't use any other exemption criteria that may be out there. Professional experience, not used. Where you conducted your studies, not used. Citizenship and geographic location, not used. We cannot assess English language proficiency based on those criteria. Do not request us to make a consideration because of your 10 years of employment as an accountant in Canada. That's not viable for our review. You need to have the education exemption, or you must self-identify as a native English speaker. ELPT scores are due September 1, so make sure that you are getting this process done now. That'll be just a little over a month from this day, and if you apply for our program right at the deadline, only have that month to get in your ELPT score. All right, the final thing I want to mention here that only a few applicants will need to know about is the access pathway. So some individuals may have faced barriers or obstacles or some sort of issue when it comes to accessing post-secondary education, or they face those barriers within their post-secondary education that prevented them from meeting our academic admission criteria. So perhaps you completed a B or you completed a bachelor's degree, but you didn't have the B average, but you faced some sort of issue within your studies. Perhaps you attended some undergraduate studies, but you didn't complete your bachelor's degree program for some sort of barrier or external circumstance. That may be grounds to allow you to apply for our program via the access pathway. The access pathway is equity seeking. We want to make sure that we provide support to those who were restricted from acquiring the appropriate post-secondary studies to be eligible for our program, to gain admission to our program, based off of a combination of some of their undergraduate studies, as well as relevant professional experience. So it's not a pathway that's for everybody. You need to review our admissions website for more information as to whether you qualify for the access pathway or not. And the key component there is that 5+ years of relevant professional experience in the field of law and or immigration. If you've studied some undergraduate study and have that 5 years of relevant professional experience, plus you have that means to provide rationale, the barriers, the circumstances you face that prevented you from meeting our admission criteria, you may be eligible for the access pathway. Definitely review that within the application for more information. Access pathway candidates must submit a full, complete, and up-to-date resume or CV via email after the application. You should include your application reference number, and then you must provide that special circumstances statement. It will be built into the application under the special circumstances section, and you have to answer the question as to what were those barriers, the circumstances, the life changes faced during your undergraduate study. Do not utilize that special circumstances statement to talk about current barriers. If you are dealing with financial issues, or perhaps you have children who require your attention, that's not a component of the access pathway. It's not something that we're looking at. It is circumstances that you have to manage when it comes to entering our program should you be granted admission. Also, don't forget to answer the question. It's not an area for you to provide positive reviews of how you're interested in the program. That's what the personal statement of interest response is for. This needs to specifically highlight the life circumstances that may have prohibited, presented barriers, and or discouraged access to successful completion of your degree studies. So key takeaways: the access pathway is not for everyone. Make sure it's eligible for you. It's not just for those who have a low GPA. No professional experience provided in that case, and it's not something that's going to be taken into consideration. You will need to do some upgrading to improve your overall GPA, specifically your undergraduate GPA, through other means, such as like the certificate in law program offered by the Faculty of Law here at Queen's University. Again, that resume must be up to date, it must be complete, and it must provide information about the relevant 5+ years of experience in the fields of law and or immigration. Retail, healthcare, engineering, commerce, those aren't relevant professional experience areas, and the access pathway statement is not for you, or the access pathway is not for you. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the admission cycle as I open up the Q&A here. Our application is open right now. It closes at the end of day August 1st, so just a couple days away now. The document deadline, though, is September 1st. So you apply now up until end of day August 1st. You will have the full month of September, the full month of August to provide your documents. So you upload those with your application. You upload them via the application system, or you have them sent on your behalf via the SGS or via your post-secondary institutions directly to the SGSPA office. Review our web pages right now, learn more about the program, start gathering your documents now, scan those documents in really good black and white format, make sure everything is submitted and not blurry. Only submit the documents required of your application. If you don't have a document that's listed anywhere there, don't provide anything additional. We don't need to see passports, things like that. There are no refunds of the application fee. It's $110. There are no deferrals for future terms. So make sure you know that you are only applying for January 2025. Also, we encourage you to utilize the professional experience section of the application. All right, let's go ahead and open up the Q&A. So myself and Valerie will be here to answer your questions. If there's anything that we're seeing consistently come up, or if we see upvotes for questions come in consistently, you can give questions a thumbs up and I'll answer those ones verbally to the group here. We ask you to ask one question at a time. Don't spam your questions. We will try to get to everybody today. Also, don't provide personal information. No cell numbers, no addresses, no email addresses. All right, questions are coming in. As we gather more, I'm just going to highlight immigrationdiploma.ca is our website. I'm also going to send out the links to everyone here in the chat. Also, facebook.com/QueensLaw GDipICL will give you all the up-to-date information about future webinars, the admission cycles opening and closing, as well as provide you with some key information about some alumni and their details, as well as just some general program information. All right, I'm going to go ahead and sort these by most upvoted and try to answer them. Again, you can give a question a thumbs up if you see that there's one that you want answered, or you can just ask your own. By all means, we're here to try and help. All right, I have 5 years of continuous education, 3-year bachelor degree in English from India. Then I moved to Canada and did a 2-year postgraduate diploma in international business management. That is from native English country. I am also a Canadian permanent resident. Am I exempted from giving the ELPT? So I will cover the first thing first here. Canadian permanent resident does not matter. Citizens, PRs, no status in Canada, it does not matter when it comes to the ELPT submission requirement. We know there are a lot of people who are Canadian citizens who do not have English as their primary or mother language because they immigrated to Canada and they've brought their native tongues with them. It's hugely important. We want you to be able to come to Canada and interact with family, friends, and your community in your native language. But for our program, you need to be English language proficient. So this individual, they did a 3-year bachelor's degree, which covers 3 of the 4 years required. But that 2-year postgraduate diploma, International Business Management, a diploma program, typically is offered at the college level. So I would say that this individual may not be eligible for the education exemption. I'm not going to provide any confirmation because that's not what this webinar is for. We don't provide pre-assessments. You will have to review the education exemption in full. And if that's a college program, that's not going to be sufficient for the exemption consideration. For professionals, usually have one manager. Only then how do we provide 2 references? So that could be across multiple different employers. If you operated at 2 or 3 or 4 different employment opportunities, I've not only worked at Queen's University in my career, I've worked at multiple different institutions and organizations. I would go back and look at other managers to provide references. Like I mentioned, current or former. And sometimes within an organization, there's a manager and then there's a supervisor that you report into. You could report into either or. Both of those would be acceptable. How much is the fee for all terms? The total tuition right now is $15,933.77. All students pay the exact same amount of tuition. There's no change depending on citizenship. Again, that is subject to change every single year. And anybody who goes beyond kind of the September month for our each intake could be subject to an increase in tuition. So again, if you're kind of beginning our program now in January, you may be subject to an increase in tuition for your final term. So just be aware of that. Are the classes in person or will be online? As I've mentioned already, everything in our program is delivered entirely online. Do we have an option to change courses from full-time to part-time? As currently I'm not working, but hopefully I will have a job in the middle of 2025. So yes, if you're in the program under a certain study plan, you may request a change in study plan. It will potentially extend the amount of time it will take you to complete the program. However, it may be reviewed and approved upon request. But what I do recommend people do is apply for the study plan you can maintain throughout your entire program. My bachelor's transcript from India shows all the criteria mentioned in the webinar, but does not have information on credits allotted to each course and grades in that format, A, B+, etc. But does include the marks obtained with results. What can I do? That's acceptable. We've seen lots of the international credentials not have a credit associated. It just means that they're all weighted the same. And if there's a percentage, that would be fine. Percentages are acceptable for our assessment. One thing to note for international credentials, a lot of people will ask us, oh, I got this percentage grade. Am I eligible? Because we don't do the pre-assessment, we can't provide you with details in that regard. What we can inform you is that if you did an international credential that had some sort of ranking or class system associated with your degree, typically a second division or second class upper and higher will meet the B average. Second class or division lower, or third class or division or lower, typically will not meet the B average. No guarantee though, that's unofficial. We're just letting you know that through history, that's typically what we see as meeting the requirement. Could you please elaborate on how the students are graded in this program? Is it similar to an undergraduate program with midterms and final exams? Good question. Obviously, assignments are going to be a major component. Attendance in tutorials is also a component of grading. There are quizzes. There are no final exams. So keep that in mind with our program. Midterms, I'm not exactly sure if they would be classified as midterms or if they'd be classified just as quizzes. That would be a question more for our in-program colleagues once you get to that stage. But no final exams with any of our courses. Readings or assignments, quizzes, those attendance at tutorials, those are the major marking components. Just graduated in Ashton College as legal and immigration assistant. Do I need to still provide professional reference? Yes, every single applicant must provide one professional reference at minimum with their application. If you've completed the Ashton College program, you will need to provide an academic reference from that program. If I did my master's that was not completed and it's not noted on my application, but it's included in the transcript submitted, is that going, oh, sorry, that's just jumped down. Is that going to be an issue? I mean, you should note on your application that that was completed. If you've provided the transcript, it won't be an issue because we've received the transcript for our assessment. I would say if you applied and you didn't note it on your application, you should be contacting us at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca to inform us that you made an error. You need to highlight this as well and make sure that that's listed. All right. Any professional experience must be entered or only belonging to teaching military. So this is an excellent question. So because the application is set up for almost all post-secondary programs on Queens's campus and online, the application is very rigid, and they do have that listing when it comes to the professional experience of teaching, military research, etc. Disregard that and just list your professional experience in chronological order, and your special circumstances should just be that utilized for that special circumstances for the access pathway. So keep that in mind. I have experience in food and logistics industry. Should I include it? You should include that in the professional experience section. I have a BA in English Literature and a Master's of Arts in teaching English as a second language, I believe, from Iran. Although my education was conducted in English, I don't have an official letter confirming this. However, the course titles on my transcript suggest that the instruction was in English. Would this be sufficient? No. While you think it may address it and should be sufficient, it's not. We know that there are a lot of programs out there that they provide documents in English, but they're taught in a different language. You need to have a letter from that institution informing us that the medium of instruction was conducted in English. So please start gathering that document now. I've completed a bachelor's and master's degree in computer applications in India and also a postgraduate diploma in Canada, working in an immigration consultancy firm for more than a year. It is my fourth attempt to get the admission in this program. Please guide me. I'm highly motivated. I understand there's nothing further I can provide in regards to past applications. The only encouragement we provide anybody who's applied to our program is that you review the admission criteria and ensure that you've completed all the elements, paying specific attention to the things that you can control. The references you want to utilize, the personal statement of interest is really key, and the English language proficiency requirement. If you were required to provide an ELPT score, make sure you provide it and it meets the score requirement. Somebody says that they have an ECA from IQAS. Where can it be uploaded while filing the application? So first of all, that should not be the only document you are providing. That should be provided in support of a transcript that's provided from with your document. So if you have a copy of your transcript plus you have this ECA, you can combine them together into one PDF document and upload that for the admission review process. If you only have the ECA, that's not going to be sufficient. You have to get your official copies of transcripts submitted on your behalf directly to the SGSPA office. While filing the application form for the bursary, there's a requirement to fill the student number, though I have filled my application, but the student number has not been generated. So technically, a student number should have been generated via the SGSPA application system. You should be able to log in and find one. However, it's not a requirement. For anybody who's filling out the bursary application, just enter 0. Enter 0 in there so that you can still submit the application form. I'm going to go ahead and close the Q&A now. We're just over time, so we're going to try and get to as many as possible. Hello, I'm a refugee and cannot travel or contact my home country where I got my bachelor's degree. Therefore, I cannot ask the university to send my transcript directly to you. I already have it with me. Is it acceptable? Thanks in advance. Yes, you can scan your copy of your transcript for the admission review process. Please note, though, that if you're made an offer of admission and you have to submit an official document, you may have to get your copy of your transcript notarized, and that might have to be submitted on your behalf to meet the official document requirement. But you can discuss that requirement with the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs office should you receive an offer of admission. But for the admission review process, that would absolutely be fine. I completed a 2-year master's program at UBC and worked as a regulated international student immigration advisor, or RISIA, at UBC for 6 years to provide the immigration advice to these students in English. Could I be exempted from the language requirement? No. Professional experience is not utilized for the exemption criteria. It doesn't matter where you studied, the fact that you studied in Canada, and the fact that you were a RISIA at a post-secondary institution, that's not a factor for our review. It has to be that you either self-identify as a native English speaker or you have the education exemption criteria, which it does not sound like you have because you've only listed that 2-year master's degree. You have to provide an ELPT score for the admission review process, no exceptions. My transcript doesn't state the term and year they were taken, just states the entire 4-year term, but has all other prerequisites. Would that be acceptable? Yes, that should be fine for our review of your overall GPA. If you need to provide additional information about the medium of instruction, make sure you also include that. All right. Is the tutorial once every weekend? So somebody's asking about the timing of tutorials. Tutorials take place once per week for every single week of the course. So for example, for ICL 810, there is the Tuesday 1-hour plenary tutorial that will take place every single Tuesday for 6 Tuesdays. Then students get to select the tutorial, their 2-hour tutorial. Either it'll be on a weeknight evening, typically Wednesday or Thursday night between 6 and 8 p.m., or it'll be on a weekend, either Saturday or Sunday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Those will take place once on either of those days. So once on a weeknight, once on a weekend, for 2 hours, every single weeknight or weekend for the first 6 weeks. Hopefully that's explained the tutorial structure for you. How can I change my references? I'm not able to do it on my portal. You should be contacting the SGSPA office at sgspa.reception@queensu.ca. They can assist you with reference amendments. Any professional experience must be entered or only belong. I've already answered this question. Please list any experience in the professional experience section. Doesn't specifically have to be relevant to those terms that are listed on the application. I've completed a language bachelor's degree in Mexico. Would this be sufficient? Sufficient in regards to what? Sufficient for admission to our program? Absolutely, because we review any credential for admission consideration. Now, I don't know if your GPA meets the requirement, but there is no specific field that an applicant needs to have studied in to be eligible for our program. If you're asking about sufficient for the English language ELPT score requirement, perhaps not. If it's 4+ years, if it was taught entirely in English and you can demonstrate proof of that, you may be eligible for that exemption. If not, if you were in Mexico and it wasn't taught in English, or if it was only 3 years, it would not meet the exemption criteria. Could you please address my query? I have a 4-year bachelor's degree from India and a master's degree from Canada. Once I submit my application and upload all the required documents and transcripts, if I have been accepted with the admission, do we also need to send any physical transcripts? Oh, yes. So that question. Yes. If you've uploaded your documents for the admission review process, that's not an official copy of your transcript. That is you submitting whatever version of the transcripts you can acquire or you have access to, which has been handled and opened by the applicant for our review. That's not official. An official document is submitted by all incoming students. It needs to be submitted by the post-secondary institution directly to our institution, or if you've received a physical unopened copy of a transcript, leave it unopened and you can send it to the SGSPA office to meet that requirement. But all incoming students will be informed of this requirement. We'll let you know right away, and you should be completing this as soon as possible. All right, final couple questions here. Follow up for the professional reference. I don't have professional and jobs since I didn't work since 2015 up to now, but I am a licensed life insurance and investment advisor. Do I need to be top my upline? I don't quite understand that phrasing to become my... I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're referring to with that final sentence. It's not reading like I can really understand what you're asking. So you're asking, you haven't worked since 2015, but you're working now as a life insurance and investment advisor. So you should have some sort of supervisor, ideally someone you respond to in regards to the work that you're doing. If you're independent, you should go back prior to 2015 and see if you can acquire any of those professional references. If you have any volunteer experience, you can utilize a volunteer supervisor. On the off chance that there's no other people you can access, you can utilize a client or a high-level client, someone in a leadership position, on the off chance that that's the only thing that you're able to provide. We can review it. It doesn't mean it's going to be acceptable. We may have to go back out to you and request additional references. I would encourage you to look into volunteer experiences to try and acquire some sort of volunteer supervisor at this point. All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you so much for participating. Again, go ahead and utilize the links I've provided in the chat. I'll provide them again right now. Visit our webpage. Learn more at the future webinars I'm going to be hosting later this week. I'm going to be doing webinars all the way up until the evening of August 1st, because I want to make sure everybody has all the available opportunities to learn more about the program. So learn about the program, come visit our websites, ask us questions, immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. We will endeavor to answer everybody's question as quickly as we can. But in the meantime, thank you very much for participating. We greatly appreciate your time here. And hopefully this has given you enough information for us to see an application for January 2025 from you. So take care. Have yourself a great day.